Marriage Encounter. We are delighted to be with you on the airways. We trust that you're doing well. If you are married, we trust that you're having a fantastic time in your relationship. If you're not yet married, you planning to, then you have tuned into the right place, because we are sharing very important bits of information that will assist you in making your marriage meaningful when you do get married. And if you're there wondering, well, where do I fit in? I'm having struggles with my relationship. We want to let you know that we're here to assist. Marriage Encounter is the place where we talk about all things marriage. With me this morning, this day is Pastor Adams, Pastor Staton Adams. We are delighted to have you with us again as we share with our friends in Radio Lands, those who are listening in Montserrat, in St. Kitts Nevis, here in Antigua, Barbuda, and those who are listening via the World Wide Web, whether you're listening on YouTube or you're listening on Facebook. We welcome you to another edition of Marriage Encounter. Good day, Pastor Adams. Welcome.
Thank you very much, and we are always delighted to have all of these who are viewing and listening to us as we continue this very intriguing conversation that we began. It is educative. We are dealing with the real hard issues that sometimes people are afraid to confront, but this is all in the process of educating and improving marriage and family relationships. So call somebody, let them know that Marriage Encounter is on, and we are ready to go.
That's right. That's right. We would like to invite you to bow your heads with us as we have a word of prayer. Eternal Father and our God, be with us as we share again on Marriage Encounter. We ask for your wisdom and your guidance in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Well, for the last few, perhaps I can now say months, we have been discussing this matter of conflicts in marriage. We are using a guide produced by Cloud and Townsend, Boundaries in Marriage. It is a good resource for you to have. So we make reference to that as a guide, and every now and then you hear us refer to Cloud and Townsend, because this is a very useful information, useful material. The book is available on Amazon. You can get it there. Well, Pastor Adams, we have been looking at the matter of conflicts in marriage, different kinds of conflicts. And I believe it might have been about 6 or 5 weeks ago that we started talking about immaturity or brokenness of one person. We said that when we have a situation like this, one of the things that people need to do is, well, before I get to that, let me just say that sometimes people, and I'm going to say quote unquote, fall in love, and they do not realize or they fail to see the imperfections of their spouses. Some people, when they're in the, what do we say, the in love kind of feeling there, the hype of getting married, there is a tendency for individuals to idealize the relationship, where they fail to see weaknesses, where they fail to see that the person that I'm getting married is not all I think the person is. And so they get married, and after the honeymoon wears off and reality comes to the fore, they then begin to realize, hey, wait a while, my spouse is not as perfect as I thought my spouse was. And we're saying one of the things you need to do is to accept reality, accept reality. And we want to build on that today, Pastor Adams.
Well, I am glad that you said that, and that is a reality, that you don't know the person entirely 100%, even on the day of the wedding when you come to the altar and say, I do. After the wedding pictures, what you just referred to there, Dr. Greene, is what we call second phase knowing or second phase knowledge. There are some things that will come to your attention that you will see and notice. Both persons will see and notice in either of the spouses that you didn't necessarily see before. And some of these things can cause some of these conflicts to arise that we are talking about now in this series of presentations that we have started. And it can be very challenging for some, and particularly if you're not matured enough to negotiate these, to navigate these areas. The whole marriage could just break down into a whole conflictual, well, you can develop a marriage type that is called conflictual, habitual conflict type of marriage relationship. And so what we are seeing now in this series of presentation is really to help us navigate this whole process, this whole aspect that no marriage is free of these, right? No marriage, and we need to say that because sometimes when we talk to the ideal, people think that, oh, you probably got it made, or Dr. Greene probably got it made. No marriage is free of these realities. We all had to pass there. I am still dealing with realities because you're dealing with marriage and family cycle. The marriage and family cycle bring changes along with it that you have to deal with as you go along. So you're never free from this thing.
Well, but every day is it's, should I say, it's a journey of discovery, right?
Yes.
And the journey of discovery is one where you're going to learn some pleasant things. You're also going to learn some things that surprise you along the way.
Yes, sure.
Some things that you wish weren't there. But this is a part of life. And I want to just refer quickly back to the cycle that you mentioned there, where the relationship gets into this rut of you're having this cycle of habitual conflict. Now, we said earlier, sometime in the past, that conflict is not necessarily a bad thing. In fact, it's a reality of life. But what you do not want to happen is to have a relationship where you are in more of a war zone than you're not, where
Yes.
if you have a good day, then you praise God, but the majority of the times you and your spouse can't see eye to eye. You're always arguing, you're always fussing, you're always bickering with one another. You don't want that kind of relationship. And what we're seeking to do is to provide guidelines, to provide helpful suggestions as to how you can get out of that situation and live a life of enjoyment, a life of satisfaction, a life of fun, where marriage becomes not just livable, but enjoyable.
Yes, you want to have 11 great moments as opposed to just one bad moment in the experience, right? You want to have 11 great moments as opposed to one bad moment.
That's right. So now, Pastor Adams, we said it's important to accept reality. The idealistic framework that you may have had, if you're married for long enough, you realize that, hey, that's not so. And we did share and spend the last 3 or 4 weeks talking about some areas where you need to accept the reality. If we can move on, one of the other things you need to learn to do, where you are having, and I'm going back just to provide context, where you are having immaturity or brokenness of one person, accept reality as one thing. And number two, you want to communicate your support to your spouse. Now, I'm going to say number 2 and number 3 together because I think it is important to discuss these kind of side by side. People may get the wrong impression, So communicate your support to your spouse and face issues as real problems, right? I'm putting those two together, Pastor Adams, because we don't want to give the impression that you're ignoring the problems,
No,
but at the same time,
definitely not.
You don't want to dwell on them forever.
You don't want to dwell on them forever, and therefore you have to bring it in the open. And that aspect of communication is so crucial because while you referenced Cloud and Townsend, I am going back to one of the professors who have done longitudinal study. He husband and wife team, that is Dr. John Gottman. He said clearly that matter of communication is so crucial. In fact, all of this research and work that we have done in marriage and family science boil down to those 3 things: respect for your spouse, your ability to communicate, and resolving conflicts. That those 3, everything boils down to those 3. And so you have to communicate to your spouse, or how else does the person know? But it's not just communicating, but how you communicate. You don't want to communicate in a way that makes the person feel bad, lesser than, put down. So you're not you're not communicating in a condescending way, because you're a team, and we established that before in our conversation, I think week before last. You are actually a team, and so it's not a condescending, is not to make the person feel bad about themselves or whatever issue they are. You want to communicate using what is actually happening to you, to bring out the empathy and the understanding and the support from the other person. That is what you are really trying to do when we are communicating. So if it is me, I must be able to communicate my feelings in a clear way that my spouse understand what is happening. Is it the hurt because, is it the conflict because of something that's happening with me personally in my past experience, or is it something that he or she would have said or done? The communication has to be clear. And this is quite opposed. Intimate communication is quite opposed to public communication. When we talk in public spaces, the message gets skewed. Sometimes there's an element of noise, distraction. But when we're talking together in this intimate space, you want to communicate clearly that your spouse understands your, because there are feelings and emotions attached to the communication in that context.
Now, you mentioned Gottman, and I just thought I would say that Gottman does have a marriage minute podcast that some of our viewers may want to sign up to, because Gottman is one of those very I like to refer to him, Pastor Adams, as the standard for
he is
marriage education.
he is very, very good.
Yes, that's right. And while I'm in this, because I'm going to come back to what you're saying, but while I'm in this, I just want to make the point, because from time to time we refer to resources, and one of the things we want couples to engage in is marriage building activities. If you can take some time on a weekly basis or bi-weekly basis and sit and read some meaningful resources to strengthen your relationship, it can do so much for you. So from time to time, we will highlight a few resources that may be meaningful. Now on the matter of the reference that you made there, where we are talking about how you say what you say. Cloud and Towson suggests, Pastor Adams, that when you're judged, when you're nagged, when you're condemned, when you're resented, when you're subjected to some form of rebuke, that you don't really grow. When we get criticisms, they have a tendency of making us feel imperfect. They tend not to build us up. So, and the reason I paired with this matter of communicating support to your spouse with facing issues as real problems is that you want to be able to identify that there is a problem, but the how of doing it is very important. So when I wish to say to my spouse that I detect that there is a challenge in this particular area, I must find a way to do it without putting down my spouse.
And what you just mentioned there is that because I referring back to what Klaus and Thompson have said, is that you don't want to get defensive and both persons come to the defense of each other and you have a battle as to who is right and who is wrong, and you want to defend yourself if it is criticisms and why the criticism. And yes, and sometimes there's so much more that we need to understand about our spouses and how they respond to if we point out a fault or whatever, or if they act a particular way, there could be even a historical basis for that response or that action. And so that is why we have to be mindful of the process of communication as you're referring to. What do we use as one couple family life? My bosses at the general conference, they would say, be mindful of your startup. What do you say in terms of starting up, of broaching this conversation, to get the desired response that one would need. And there's a typical example dealing with conflict there, that the husband accuses the spouse of not being present, of being absent when he arrived at home, and she wasn't there. And then that communication, because communication is both verbal and non-verbal here, over time, over period, we are able not just to hear what the other person has said, but we are experiencing those emotions. We are seeing some things that says that something is not okay in this situation right now, because we ought to know each other, the body language, because we communicate with our entire being, right? Not just the verbal communication, but we are talking about communication that you also, the nonverbals, and sometimes the nonverbals are much stronger. What is not said is convey a stronger message than what is being said. So when we talk about communication here, we're not just about the verbal alone, we are talking about the entire communication in this intimate process.
Now, you were saying a while ago that, you know, the outcome, we have to be mindful of the outcome. What do we want? When you made reference to the startup, and you made reference to the Olivers at the General Conference, I find useful what Stephen Covey says in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Families, where he discussed habit number 1, being proactive. He illustrates that there is, between a stimulus and a reaction, a pause, and you can use that pause to determine, before you speak, what do I want? What kind of reaction do I want from my spouse? So you can be outside your house and you can say, when I go inside, how do I want my family to react? You can go in and say, good afternoon. Or you could go in and say, honey, I'm home, you know, and get a totally different reaction. So use the pause to think wisely.
Yes, sure.
The other matter I wanted to bring to this discussion, Pastor, is, you know, they say that we are to be emotionally intelligent. You must know what makes you tick. You must know what ticks you off. I want to translate that to your marriage. You should lead an emotionally intelligent marriage. Now, partners must take responsibility for understanding their spouse. So I should not just know about my own emotional intelligence. I should know about my spouse's own as well. And so if I say such and such a thing, what kind of effect is it likely to have? And find a creative way to lessen the negative impact of what I want to communicate.
Yeah, and the other reference, and you said that people, not just the information we are sharing, but from our experiences and the literature on all of these areas of marriage and family that we would have read, there is another book there by Dr. Brian Craig, and he says that the difference in intimacy, because we're talking to that issue, because all of these things, as we are discussing conflict here, we are at the same time saying that what is it that is the barrier to intimacy? And I don't want to run ahead of myself to say something, to announce something just yet, but we want to say is that marriages that do better, it is because of the same reasons that you've just mentioned. The couples in those marriages are more emotionally intelligent. Not that they have any other thing that is superior to other marriages. The thing that works best for them is that they are much more emotionally intelligent in terms of knowing each other, and exactly just what you said there. And I think Dr. Brian Craig brings that out beautifully in his book, Intimate Intimacy. Something on intimacy. I'm not remembering the exact title, but I'll get it.
Moving towards intimacy in marriage. An excellent resource. Very, very good resource indeed. In fact, he's one of my go-to authors when it comes to matters in marriage, and this matter of, you know, discussing intimacy and achieving it, because he gives that perspective of intimacy across different landscapes, which is so important.
He's my go-to as well.
So friends, again, it is important to know that you can communicate with your spouse in a way that makes a difference. I want to make reference to First Thessalonians 5 and verse 14. Encourage the timid, help the weak, be patient with everyone. Be patient with your spouse. Let your spouse know that his or her weakness, his or her inability is something with which you will be supportive. You will be patient. You're not overlooking it. You're not saying it's okay. I like it that way. But you're saying, I recognize that there is this particular challenge, but I'm willing to work with you on this. And on the flip side, while you are communicating in an effective way to your spouse, it is also important that you indicate to your spouse that, listen, I am not happy with this particular situation. I'm going to encourage you. I'm going to quote from Cloud and Townsend again. A part of love is honesty and requiring holiness and growth from each other. So where your spouse is not mature, let her know, let him know. That's important.
Yes, because that's the team together. Because if the one is not matured in that particular way, he or she needs to grow in that area, and that is what it is, right? And there's another biblical references, the encouraging one another that Paul referenced in building each other up in not only in Ephesians, but also in the Thessalonians. It is the same thing, right? We have to build each other up. So I have to help you grow. You have to help me grow. So both of us are growing and maturing in a corresponding way, right? Because we said, again, I think I did make that reference. We come with strengths and weaknesses. We are not perfect individuals who come together. The institution is perfect, but we are not perfect. So there is growing that both of us needs to do. There's maturing that both of us need to do, and that's what we want. Marriage is moving to that level of maturity, total maturity, and oneness as we grow. Notice oneness, not sameness, right? Yes.
Certainly, Pastor. And so, friends, as we come to a close, because our time is dwindling down. I'm going to get an indication of how much more time we have in a minute. But we want to re-emphasize this point, that you can be direct. You can tell what the problem is as you see it. Let your spouse know how you feel and how it affects you. What we're effectively saying here is that you must use iMessages in your communication, because that is going to soften the impact. That is going to make you communicate in a way that says, this is an issue that I'm not comfortable with, but I'm taking responsibility for my own feelings. I am being affected this way, but we can work on it. And you can offer meaningful suggestions likewise.
Yeah, because the iMessage is so crucial, and that's part of the startup process of the conversation. And let us not miss this. I want our viewing, listening audience to hear this, because when you use language, that is judgmental, and that makes the other person more defensive, and that and irresponsive to the person that's going to respond to the communication, because it is they are more acting now to defend themselves. The person becomes defensive. But when you use the iMessage or the iLanguage that we say, the communication is more open, and you can flow. You're not judging the person, and because sometimes when we do that, we can actually judge the person wrongly, as in the illustration that Cloud and Thompson use when we're talking to this issue now, right? And Will Schultz make reference to this when we talk about the fundamental in interpersonal relationship behavior, how important it is for us to use this iMessage, this iLanguage, as opposed to the judgmental method that makes the person shut down and have them defensive. And so you never get to talk to the issue or discuss it in a mature way. and keep it out in the open.
That's right. That's right. You know, we can't overemphasize the importance of communication, and that is why it is one of those crucial areas. You have to be willing to express yourself. If I am being impacted negatively and I cannot express my feelings, if I have no way of sharing with my spouse how I'm feeling, then I'm going to lose as a result. We ought to be able to share. And one of the challenges in marriage is that you ought to find a way. And we like to say, remember, please, viewers, listeners, communication is a learned behavior. We have to learn to communicate effectively and properly. So when we make reference to things like iMessages, when you go to a seminar and they're discussing communication, you may need to practice this. I generally give assignments where couples go home and practice it and get accustomed to be able to refashioning and reshaping their messages in a way that can reflect not the condemnatory spirit of saying you always do so and so, and when you do that and that, that is a very attacking approach, and you don't want to do that. You want to be able to say, in a softer tone, you're owning, when such and such a thing happens, I feel this way. I'm taking responsibility for my action. Then I can say, I would appreciate if we can work on this together, or we can take that particular approach, as the case may be.
Yeah, and that is part of that's the work part of marriage, right? That's the work part of marriage, because yeah, both persons have to be responsible, and we have to take that is the work part. It just doesn't happen. Relationships doesn't happen. Blessed, fulfilled marriage, it just doesn't happen. We have to learn some things. We have to unlearn some things. And so when we do that, it is improving me as a person. I am developing, I'm maturing, I'm growing as a person. And when both persons are making the effort to do that, then the relationship as a whole is growing and improving. So hence what you mentioned earlier, the benefits of conflicts, if we see it from the positive side, and if we work using the positive steps to get them resolved, those are the benefits that you can have in the relationship, and that is what you really want.
Well, that's all the time we have for today, friends. We are so grateful that we were able to share with you very important principles that we have been sharing. Next week, we're going to continue. You don't want to miss what we have to share next week. It's a continuing discussion. And again, if you're having issues with your spouse, please try as best as you can to get your spouse in on this. There is a repeat broadcast. I mean, we go at 10:30 on Thursday mornings. We go at 6:30 on Thursday afternoons, and at 2 p.m. on Saturday afternoons. So be sure to get your spouse listening in. And of course, the recordings are on Second Advent Radio website, or on SLC Church channel. You can just Google Marriage Encounter with Drs. Greene and Adams, and you will find it there. That's all the time we have for today. If you have questions, comments, or concerns, Marriage Encounter at slcadventist.org. That is Marriage Encounter at slcadventist.org. May God bless you until next week.